This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I am your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week, two super-powered space corgis here to save us from an alien invasion. This week, I am joined by Kait Lamphere.
Hello.
And our very special guest for this episode, Ben Kahn.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you both for being here with me. I'm super excited to talk about comic books. Ben, I want to introduce you to the folks at home, but before I do that, I have to make the big special announcement of the show, which is the IRCB zine is coming. IRCB.FYI is the website that you can go to. There's a link in the show notes. You can get notified when the zine goes live on Kickstarter on March 3rd is the date that it's happening. I don't know what time, but it's happening that day. So make sure you go to ircb.fyi in your browser. If it doesn't work, just search IRCB Kickstarter. I promise you can find it. There's links in the show notes, all that stuff. The Kickstarter is going to be amazing. We just got a page in from Meredith McCrary, and I'll tell you, it's maybe the funniest page in the book. And we've got some bangers in here. It's crazy. Every single page I see is somehow better than the last. We are just stacked with incredible artistry inside of this scene, so you do not want to miss it. IRCB.FYI. I'm done talking about IRCB.FYI/zine. Sorry, it's all in there. But anyways, we're here to talk about comic books. We're here to do the thing that we do every single week. But I got to kick things over to Ben. Ben, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you. For the folks that maybe don't know you at home, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've got going on?
Yes, thank you. I am a comic book and prose writer. My work includes the GLAAD-nominated graphic novel Renegade Rule for Dark Horse, the Captain Laserhawk, a Blood Dragon remix prequel manga for Tokyo Pop. That is a prequel to the Netflix animated series from Adi Shankar. I also did the comic book tie-in to the Immortals Phoenix Rising video game. My prose debut with Scholastic was the non-binary middle grade novel Elle Campbell Wins Their Weekend. And I have now, this few weeks ago, my latest book came out, a middle grade graphic novel from Oni Press with artist Georgeo Brooks called Mr. Muffins, Defender of the Stars, about a young boy pulled into an intergalactic war when he learns that the cosmic chosen one, destined to save the universe, is his pet corgi.
I have to say, Kait, I got a chance to read this book, and it is so much fun, but we cannot talk about it right now. We have to talk about comic books other than the books that you've written first. So yes. I'm going to kick things over to you, Ben. I have two legally mandated questions that I have to ask you, and that is, how have you been, and how have comic books been? Tell us what you've been reading and what you've been up to.
Oh, I have been trying my best.
You know, understandable given the state of all things right now.
Yeah, it feels disingenuous to say like things are good, but
totally.
But you've got a new book out, so that's very exciting.
I've got a new book out. I have things to celebrate and be proud of, and we have comics, and comics are still great. So let's talk comics. And I have been catching up on Joshua Williamson's current run of Superman with a whole bunch of great artists. Joshua Williamson has been a writer I've enjoyed a lot of his stuff lately. I really enjoyed his Green Arrow run, his run on Batman and Robin, all the stuff with Damian Wayne. So, you know, I've been a little... I kind of fell off the Superman books at some point along the way because you can only read so much in a week. But I'd heard so many good things about his run that I decided to, you know, I think the first 3 or 4 trades are out now. So I have started catching up on trades. I'm in the second one. And if you're a Superman fan and are just looking for like good classic like Superman storytelling, this is awesome. Like, this is everything I want as a Superman fan. Like, you know, a great focus on his romance with Lois Lane. And the characters are all in new scenarios or like new responsibilities, but also feel like very recognizable and iconic. So it's Lois Lane having to be in charge of the Daily Planet. Lex Luthor's in prison, but is convinced that he needs to work with Superman to stop an even worse threat that's on its way.
Okay.
And I love that. But that's my favorite. The only thing I love more than Luthor versus Superman is when they team up, because it's never Luthor having like seeing the light and being like, "Oh, I've been wrong. Like, I apologize, Superman. Please forgive me."
Mhm.
No, he never stops being arrogant. He never stops being cocky. He's like, "No, I was right then, but now things have changed, and I'm still right now. But I need you. I need you to. I need you to, Superman. I need you to just get over all of that. I'm not going to apologize, but let's just move on." And so I love that direction for Luther of like of like being this very catty ally to Superman. Uh, the setup is like Luthor is in jail and he has bequeathed LexCorp to Superman to now be his just corporate ally in crime fighting. And meanwhile, the big threat is that some new villains from Luthor's past have now returned to wreak their vengeance on Luthor, and that is ensnaring a lot of people in Superman's life, including Silver Banshee, who is now Jimmy Olsen's girlfriend. And God, if that romance isn't so adorable.
Oh man.
So yeah, it's introducing some like really fun new characters and concepts like Marilyn Moonlight, this very Western inspired like moon based vigilante, that's like this kind of urban folklore from Metropolis's past that I'm very excited to know more about. But she has this great, there's this great moment in arc where Superman's weakened and she restores him using using moonlight.
Oh,
And
cool. Very cool.
yeah, and it's just such a great handle on the whole classic Superman cast and Superman world. And if you're looking for just some really good classic like Superman stuff to sink your teeth into, especially like if you're as like chomping at the bit for the movie as I am,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm having a great time with it. Like I said, I'm on the second volume now. I know there's at least three. I know the fourth, if it's not already out, will be on its way. I know it's got some tie into Absolute Power, which I read when that was going on because I really enjoyed
Okay.
that event. But yeah, just Superman comic book storytelling at its best right now.
Gosh, that's amazing. We just recorded an episode actually for a Patreon series called IRCB Movie Club. Recently, we rewatched Superman Returns, the
Oh,
Brandon Routh
I
movie.
haven't seen that since it was in theaters.
Well, that was the thought. So we were as a I guess contrast to the film. We were looking for like some good classic Superman stories to read, and I didn't realize that Williamson's run was like really just hitting on classic Superman stuff. I might have to go check this out because we read the Superman, I think it was 76 series, or read the first volume of that, which was fun. Very ridiculous. It like I as I was reading it, it felt like I was I could hear, Gene Hackman's voice in my ear as Lex Luthor is playing this arrogant character, in the comics. It's very well put together. But it sounds to
So
me like that's what Williamson is channeling in this run.
to me, it felt that like it feels very much like the Superman world I know from like Justice League, like Superman the animated series, Justice League
Gotcha.
Unlimited. Like I'm reading it. I'm hearing Clancy Brown as Lex Luthor. I'm hearing
Ah,
George Newbern as Superman.
okay. Oh man, that's okay. Well, I too many books to read, but maybe I'll have to give this at least a volume of this a shot. I've got the DC Universe Infinite thing. Maybe I'll try it out. Maybe I'll try it out.
Yeah, there's some like exciting new villains. Just like a handle on what makes the Big Blue Boy Scout so compelling,
Yeah.
and just some like really great action. I just finished the story arc where the villain is, I don't want to spoil too much, but it's a villain called the Chained, and it's just un. And when the issue that takes it down, it's almost like a full issue long action set piece, like
Cool.
versus him. And I love those. I love when these big fights are really given the space to breathe, and you just get the real, a real sense of twists and turns to it. Nothing makes me just put a book down with a roll of my eyes more than when a big fight that they've spent 5 issues building up to is resolved in 4
Sure,
pages.
sure, sure.
But this Superman is just full of those these just great top tier superhero fights and action. So I've just been having an absolute blast with it.
That's great. Oh man, Kate, now's your time. Start reading Superman right now. Well, Kate, let me kick over to you then. How have you been? How have comic books been? What have you been up to?
I have been learning a new craft. I already do a lot of crafts. So maybe this is one too many, but I was recently given a bunch of supplies for loom beading. So this is like where you take these tiny little beads that are just itty bitty, and you have to have a special needle to pass through the middle of them. Like a sewing needle is too thick. And so you weave these onto a loom, and you end up with like a piece of art or a bracelet or something. I should have brought it so I could show you on camera.
Maybe
I didn't know they still make looms. I thought those were for challenging Athena.
That's good.
Well, maybe in the post credits you can show us something.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll take a break at the end. But that's really cool. How did you get into that? What moved you off the path of knitting and other things that I know you do?
I'm still knitting. Like I'll knit for 20 minutes and bead for 20 minutes. It's just a split time now. I had a family member give me a whole bunch of supplies, and I was like, I need you to limit the amount of supplies that you're giving me right now because I only have so much space in my house, and I need to learn how to do this craft before I like dedicate space to it. So but I'm in it. I gotta go back and visit so I can get more stuff.
Great problems to have.
So I have been reading a lot of comics, and I most recently read Navigating with You. This is by Jeremy Whitley, Cassio Ribeiro, Nikki Foxtrot, and Micah Myers. And this was Aaron's pick for the reading challenge in our Goodreads group, which recently passed 1,300 members.
You know how much I support this pick.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I do a podcast with Jeremy, a weekly horror podcast with Jeremy.
Right.
And we co-wrote a book that will be coming out from Simon & Schuster called The Dashing School for Wayward Princes with Melissa Capriglione. So I am very happy to be on the Jeremy episode.
That's really exciting. I had no idea. I'm not sucking up to you. This is a coincidence.
Shout out, buddy. If you're listening to this, shout out, buddy. Yeah. I love you.
Absolutely. I'll
see you on Wednesday.
I've also been reading Jeremy's Princeless series pretty quickly. I found like all of them on eBay. And so I'm on volume 3 or something in the last like 2 weeks. And he's really great at writing young queer female protagonists so far. And I was actually thinking before the show, I should look up a Comic-Con that he's going to be at this year and try to go meet him. So it's really funny that you know him.
If you like Princeless, I definitely recommend checking out its spinoff, Raven Pirate Princess.
That was also in my eBay order, so I'll get there.
Okay.
I found the whole stack of comics.
If you were looking for queer pirate adventures, oh boy, if you X marks the spot.
Yeah, for sure.
Boo!
Well, I've got all of them. Very good.
I made a pirate
joke.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, I gotta go and read some comics, guys. Bye.
Yeah, see you, Kate.
Okay, so back to Navigating with You. This is about 2 high school girls who move to the same North Carolina town, and they quickly become friends. They're both dealing with a lot. They're, for example, disability, divorce, grief, racism, homophobia, an emotionally abusive relationship, culture shock from moving. It sounds really heavy, but this is actually like a very supportive, nice book. I promise. These 2 characters bond over their shared nostalgic love of an out-of-print manga, which I'm familiar with. I tend to get into out-of-print manga and have to look everywhere for them, so I get it. And they travel around together looking for these individual volumes of this manga, and they like go out of state, they go online, they like go to garage sales, and they manage to find the whole series over the course of the book. Personally, I was worried. The worst thing is when you get to the end of a series and you can't find the last volume.
Right.
So the pages of this manga are like seen throughout the story, so you know what's going on in the manga. You get like this nice like alternative art style, and the plot and the relationships in that manga like build alongside the plot and the relationships and the main storyline. It's really nicely balanced. One of the main characters, her name is Nisha, and she's black. She's got cerebral palsy in her legs. She's a cosplay sewist, like she makes cosplay costumes, and she's a little bit of an activist. But she's also like fairly introverted and kind of keeps to herself. And I really like the combination of like being an introvert and also an activist. Like that's great. Because I feel like I don't know. I assume that activists are like extroverted, but that can't be right, right? Like um, the other main character is Gabby. She's Puerto Rican and Mexican and is a surfer. She's a cook. She's fairly extroverted, so they balance each other out really well. And she's dealing with the death of her mother. She's got a lot going on emotionally in this book, and somehow she's still like positive and supportive and kind. And these two girls are so supportive of one another, and I've noticed that this is like a pattern in YA queer comics for the last couple of years, and I really love it. And I hope that this kind of support is also present in YA straight romance comics. But I'm going to be real with you, I wouldn't know. um,
Bless.
This book avoids the miscommunication trope, but it still kind of like plays on that a little bit because it shows the girls like choosing to slowly open up to one another, but the things that they haven't said to one another yet don't negatively impact their relationship, and they're like supportive of one another when they do open up. Like it's like a slow build of their relationship rather than being like a miscommunication, like easy plot line or something, you know, like it's actually part like a well planned part of the story, the way that they open up. And these two teenage girls are also close with their families. And I feel like in YA, sometimes you get like unrealistically independent teens, like their parents just aren't around and don't call them. And
sure.
And so it's refreshing in this book and navigating with you to see a healthy like parent-teen relationships. And they're very different relationships too. And these teens like have like a realistic, fairly well balanced amount of independence for being like late high schoolers. But like I feel like I'm only just starting to talk about this comic, and I don't want to start giving away spoilers. Like this is great, I love it. It's like not an easy read. Like these kids are dealing with a lot, but it's so positive, and it's supportive, and like these are like people that I want to know. And my only complaint is that there isn't a second one, because I want to know what happens after it ends, because it's so well balanced. Like the end of it makes so much sense in the context of the story, and it's like realistic. Like it's not like and then they lived happily ever after the end. Like you know where they're going to go from here and like what their goals are. And it's definitely worth the read. And this was a great pick from Aaron on Goodreads. So definitely suggest this, and also joining the Goodreads reading challenge, because they're always great books.
Yeah, every year I say it, we have an incredible list of comic books, and every year I'm like, I'm going to pick a really good one, and then I'm blown away by just the incredible picks that everybody else goes with. I mean, like, it's like, what, 24 books or something this year? It's a crazy amount of just incredible comic books that you can read, and I cannot help but second it, what Kait is saying here. Everyone should go join this. You're going to read some really good comics this year if you do.
There's a lot of great comics out there.
Yeah.
So Ben, do you have like more insight into this book since you know Jeremy?
Kait, no.
Or thoughts about it?
What I can say is that what's funny is that, especially if you listen to our podcast, Progressively Horrified, it's that me and our third host, Emily Martin, the two of us are huge into manga and anime.
Okay.
And I love Jeremy making a book about like manga collecting and all that, just because of how much podcast time we've spent just yelling Evangelion and Dragon Ball and Naruto references at each other. And then Jeremy's just been like, I don't know what you two are talking about, but I'm glad you're happy, I guess. And then Jeremy counters by starting talking about like pro wrestling. I'm like, AEW good?
Yeah. That sounds like our
I mean,
podcast.
Hogan bad. I know that. I know Hulk Hogan bad.
Right. I think that's the right place to be. You know, maybe we'll bring Zach in, who's proof listening after this, and we can get that all sorted out. But I refuse to let this podcast become 3 weeks in a row of WWE or AEW discussion. So we'll see how that goes. But let me.
I come from like the anime weeb like side of like family tree of comic writers.
Great. That's I think we're gonna have you come back, Ben. That's fantastic.
The closest I get to watching pro wrestling is an encyclopedic knowledge of Dragon Ball lore.
I like that. That's I don't want to go down this rabbit hole that I'm about to start in my head, so I have to move on. Let me talk about what I've been up to. I said, I think before we started recording, that I'm prepping to go to Chicago this upcoming weekend to go to Magic Con, because my love of comic books was not enough. I also had to love other pieces of paper. In this case, cardboard pieces of paper with shiny, images on it. And it's not Pokemon. But that's another discussion as well. But nonetheless, I'm going with a couple of friends. It's going to be really cool, mostly to get some people that I know in my life together who have known each other online for a long time, all in the same place, in person. That's going to be like the most exciting part. And we're just going to go heads down and play Magic from Friday all the way to Sunday. And I'm very excited. So I've been putting off comic book reading, but I did sit down and read a few things, weirdly enough, on Valentine's Day. But one of the things I read was Bug Wars #1. I talked about it on the show. Danny was very excited about this book. I was pretty excited about it as well. This is Jason Aaron and Mahmoud Asrar. This book was maybe like one of the most brutal things I've read from Image Comics in a minute. But like in a good way, like a book that's called Bug Wars, you kind of expect bugs to just be fighting, but there's a lot more to it than that. The story opens on like this miniature world that you can get right from the get-go. Feels like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but everyone has swords and they're riding on ants and dung beetles, and it's very, very, very violent. There's like this medieval style clans of people kind of clashing against each other, the beetles versus the ants, and then we're slapped back into the real world where the actual like universe of me and you type people exist. And I didn't see the turn in this book coming about like how we go from the bug warriors to the family to the trauma at the center of the story. Like there is a lot going on in this, and it almost feels to me like this could have been a Daniel Warren Johnson like comic book. Like if you've read Do a Power Bomb or if you've read Murder Falcon, there's like this absurdity to the world of this story that I would expect from a creator like that, and not so much from Jason Aaron, which feels like an incredible like change in Aaron's like writing style in a really, really good way. And I don't really want to compare
Extremity.
Yes.
In that Daniel Warren Johnson comparison, that very brutal, violent, hyper energetic style.
Exactly. And like, I don't really want to say like, oh, Jason Aaron is becoming Daniel Warren Johnson. I don't think that that's the same, but it kind of reminded me in the tone of this book overall. By the time you get to the end of the first issue, you feel like there's more heart in this story than I've read in other Jason Aaron books. Maybe with the exception of Southern
Bastards.
Southern Bastards. Thank you. Yeah, I thought that was not the right word. And yeah, so I really liked it overall. Mahmoud Asrar just like knocks it out of the park. This is like, again, one of the most violent books I've read in a minute. And Asrar is really just flexing on you page after page after page after page where there's action. So there is a scene in the opening book that I was like, I haven't seen this type of brutality in an Image book in a very, very long time, except for maybe Invincible. Like maybe Invincible could get up at that same level of violence. So again, buyer beware. This is a very, very gory book, but I do think that the human element that ties this book together is really, really smart and really interesting, and the twist end is very fun. I don't know, for those of you that are curious, the bit of the book that you probably should know is there's bugs in a place and they're fighting, but there's also humans that move into a house where the bug fighting is happening, and how the human story and the bug story connects is kind of the mystery. But I think there's a lot of heart to this book, and for a 6-issue story, I'm very excited to see where this book goes, because I think even just in the first issue, they tell so much story. I'm really excited to see what the following 5 issues are going to bring. So I think I had a really good time, but boy, oh boy, going from this book and then directly into Mr. Muffins, I needed like I should have had a palate cleanser or something, because
those are definitely some opposite-sided adventures.
Yeah. But
little different in tone.
little different in tone, exactly. But it was fun, so if you're out there looking for a fun, violent book, Bug Wars is your pick. Or if you want to just do what I did as well and sit down and maybe have a good cry over about a bug person, you could read Fish Flies by Jeff Lemire. But I'll talk about that maybe another time. Also a very good book. But let's move on. Let's talk about comic books that are on the top of our pile, books that are new or old or just something you want to read. I want to shout out some of the folks hanging out with us on Discord today and the books that they have on the top of their pile. Danny is going to be reading Doom Academy #1 from Marvel, a book that has me so tempted to pick up, if only because it involves Doctor Doom and kids going to a school. Like that is catnip for me. Jeff is going to be reading Walt Disney's Donald Duck Christmas on Bear Mountain, which is in our Goodreads reading challenge for this year. Everybody who's read that so far has said it is like the most delightful thing in the world. I'm not surprised because it's Carl Barks, but I can't wait to sit down and read this book.
Don't ever bet against Carl Barks.
Absolutely. I think I need to get like the physical copy of this from Fantagraphics because I have another one, and they're just beautifully rendered comic books, and it's really nice to look at like the bright colors in your face rather than on a screen.
I mean, we're talking about the man who made Donald Duck comics so good he inspired the entire manga industry.
Right. Exactly. So everyone, again, another shout out to our reading challenge, full of great comic books. And Paul G is also going to be reading Navigating with You, which we already heard Kait talk about. So again, killer books on our list this year. But let's talk about comic books. Ben, why don't you talk about what's on the top of your pile? What comic book are you going to be reading next?
Yeah, so I have been having a great time with Minor Arcana, with writing and art by Jeff Lemire, letters by Steve Wands. It's out from Boom, and it's the newest written and drawn Jeff Lemire indie comic. So if you know your Sweet Tooths, your Underwater Welders, it's a Jeff Lemire original is not to be missed.
Totally.
And it's, that same very character driven storytelling, very atmospheric, very haunted, not horror, like just like emotionally haunted.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jeff Lemire doing what he does best. It's about Teresa, the daughter of a local psychic in this small kind of rundown town, who reluctantly returns to take care of her sick mother, and finds out that the magic and fortune telling might not be so fake after all. And it's we're a few issues in. I think it's had 4 issues come out so far. Teresa is a wonderful, flawed, prestige, television-ready protagonist. And from what I understand, this is going to be the first, right now, this current arc is the first in like a 4-part storytelling where it's looking to be this multi-generational, multifaceted storytelling. So Teresa's story promises to right now only be 1/4 of this larger tarot-themed arcane tapestry that Jeff Lemire is embarking on.
Yeah, it's super exciting.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a book with some like interesting mysteries, but really puts character ahead of spectacle and action, and is really an emotion-driven story, then I definitely recommend Minor Arcana.
Yeah, I really need to tear into this book. I've got all the issues sitting at home, but I was kind of like, maybe I'll get through wait for the arc to finish or whatever. But I think I should just dive in. I mean, like I said, I just read Fish Flies, which was amazing. I think I just need more Jeff Lemire like art in my life and storytelling.
And then this is gonna scratch that Jeff Lemire itch.
I love that. I just can't wait. I hope that by the end of this series we get a Jeff Lemire illustrated tarot deck. Like it's got to come.
That'd be
right?
Fantastic. Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I know Jesse Lonergan just did one recently, which looks beautiful, and I just need to get around and actually buy it. But Jeff Lemire tarot deck, I mean, come on.
That would be great.
Absolutely. Kait, let me talk about what I'm going to read before I pitch over to you. So we get some emails from 2000 AD every once in a while, and I got an email this past week about a book that they have coming out called Roxy, or I think it came out this past week, called Romance Reborn. Like I said, it's by 2000 AD, and I really have to admit, I really love what 2000 AD puts out, but I don't read enough of it. Like every once in a while I'll jump into a Judge Dredd, or I've read a couple of other things that they've done that on Paul's recommendation, but this book got me really interested because it has a story by Alex DeCampi and Erica Henderson, so I'm immediately in, right? And then
if you read Parasocial, and like Dracula motherfucker, that's not a creative team to sleep on.
Exactly. Parasocial, maybe one of my favorite books that I read. Was it last year, the year before, whenever it came out?
Oh, phenomenal graphic novel. Great
Absolutely.
comic book.
And then Mags Visaggio is in this book, and like done. I'm done. Like two stories from two sets of creators that I just absolutely love. So I'm in. The pitch that they give at the beginning of this book is Roxy came to be in 1958. It was a romance comic aimed at girls that eventually ran for 288 issues before merging with its sister title Valentine in 1963. But more than 60 years have passed between then and now, and the world and its attitudes have changed. So we thought it'd be about time to give Roxy a bit of a makeover. In the pages of this book, you'll find 4 brand new tales of modern romance, along with a look back at yesteryear, and I'm in, right? Like let's see what 2000 AD can do in their anthology style for romance comics. Like I'm ready for it.
I love that. And those are such great creators to have on like a 2000 AD romance comic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, so if you can get this at your shop, or if you want to buy it online, you can get it from 2000 AD. This looks fantastic. Like I flipped through the couple pages. I mean, just the Erica Henderson art alone is good. And if you know anything about 2000 AD, it's that they get some of the best artists in the industry for like every comic that they do. And things wax and wane in terms of like what may be your cup of tea, but I think on the whole, 2000 AD has one of the best track records as a company about putting out really good looking comic books. If not only that, really good comic books in general. So check this out if you get a chance. If you're looking for some romance, like 2000 AD is trying to put their foot in it, and I think we should support that because we need more romance comics in general. So I'm checking it out this week. I'll let you all know probably on the next episode that I'm on. Kait, let's move over to you. What's on top of your pile?
Yeah, so I've been in this like personal project of trying to read the oldest things on my to read list that I added back when I opened my Goodreads account in like 2010. And I have caught up to 2014 of when I was adding things. So this kind of this might have been released around then, basically. And this is Lobster's the Best Medicine, a collection of comics about friendship. This is by Liz Climo. And I've seen a few of these comics online, and so I'm glad to be reminded that there is a collection, and I can just sit down and enjoy all of these little cute comics all at once. And these are little 2-panel comics, and there's always like an exchange between usually 2 animal friends, might be like a rabbit and a bear, or a turtle and a fox or something. And they're just like all supportive and fun, or there's a pun or something. Like this is your palate cleanser, Mike. This is what you should have read before you read Mr. Muffins. Yeah.
Okay. Just looking at the website that I found for this, it's so adorable. Like it's such a cute thing. I've definitely seen some of these comics in some capacity, reposted somewhere. I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are in reading the whole collection of this together. If only, maybe it's just something you pick up and read a couple pages of at a time. But this is really cool. I didn't know that this was a collection.
Yeah, I also forgot. And then I went back in my to-read list from a decade ago, and I was like, all right, this looks great.
Well, that's great. Well, I guess that kind of wraps us up here for everything. I think before we wrap up the show completely, though, I think, Ben, we should talk to you a little bit about Mr. Muffins, Defender of the Stars. You worked with Georgeo Brooks on this comic. I'm curious, I think at the end of the book, not to give a spoiler of the meta away, but you said this story started with a pitch to Oni Press at C2E2. I guess, how did Mr. Muffins begin, and how did you get connected with Georgeo to work on it with Oni?
Yeah, so I kind of came up with this idea, like, what if Star Wars, but instead of Luke Skywalker, it was Corgi?
I do love that, though. It's great.
That was the joke. And then enough people said, no, that's good. You should make a real book out of that. I'm like, oh, okay. So I was going to SPX one year, just walking around, and Georgeo was tabling that year, promoting his webcomic. And as soon as I saw his artwork, I just knew, like, I think this is it. I think this is the perfect art style for Mr. Muffins, this Corgi sci-fi book I've been dreaming of. Mm-hmm. So, after SPX, I sent him an email, was like, hey, want to put together this pitch. I hope you'll work with me on it. He came aboard, and we put together, I think it was like a 5 to 8 page preview, of our main character, Ruben Mahmoud, and his corgi best friend, Mr. Muffins,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with an alien ship crash landing in the park. And I was able to get that into we made a classic ash can,
Yeah.
like printed Xerox, like classic old school style ash can. And I was able to get that to an editor at Oni. And then fast forward about 7, 8 months, and I get a Twitter DM
Oh, okay.
from an editor telling me, "Hey, we like this. We have some notes. Make those notes, and then let's see if there's a book here." So we we reworked the pitch, we got to him, and then we were off to the races making Mr. Muffins Defender of the Stars.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, like, it's very fun to hear at least like the origins of these kind of books for me, because I gotta, like, I think of all of the moments that I thought were just like really fun and perfect, like a perfect sampling that makes like Mr. Muffins. If I'm gonna pitch anyone anything, what would I pull out of the book to say, like, here's the scene that really made it for me? So it's great to hear that it was like aliens crash in the park, because I can, there's a couple moments, or there's a moment where that happens in the book. And quite honestly, I mean, some of my favorite bits of this story are the aliens that we run into, and like the universe that you establish, like the actual literal universe that you establish, in like just through passing and little bits and moments that we have with different characters. But then the antagonist aliens that we get that somehow manage to live on Earth and pick up different roles. Maybe my funniest bits of, like, I can't really pick one, but like that alien crashing and just seeing the quirkiness of those characters really sold it for me.
I loved getting to cut back to those, our chapter 1 invading aliens, leaving them stuck on Earth. I had so much fun with that as just a running gag, cutting back to what they were doing on Earth and showing them increasingly integrated with Earth culture.
Yeah.
I think my favorite bits were you have these little funny asides similar to those scenes, but particularly at the very beginning of the book, there's this character who would be the Stan Lee cameo in the park, the old man who was like, wow, the effects on these movie sets are so good these days. Like he was very funny.
I had a lot of fun with him. Honestly, I just had a lot of fun. My attitude is generally, if I'm having fun writing it, then hopefully that fun will translate to the reading experience. Like, if it's making me smile to write it, hopefully it'll make people smile to read it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so that's my first thing, was like, especially with Mr. Muffins, where it was really like a kid's book. I feel like I kind of had, more so than most, like a ton of freedom. I not
Sure.
really feel like I ever had to censor myself or hold myself back or cut anything to make it kid friendly. I really felt this is the one where I was able to just make the exact comic to like my heart's content. And
Mm-hmm.
I really felt like that involved, like not talking down to kids, knowing that they can understand complex humor,
Yeah.
trusting them to handle a big vocab word or two.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love that I got to make a comic for fifth graders that makes a general relativity joke.
Yeah. That was the thing that I really enjoyed. I was gonna bring up, is that it doesn't feel like this book is trying to talk down to kids, like you said. It's just like they can understand that, like, there are things that maybe are over their head, and that's the funny part. Or if it's not over their head, they're having a good time at the joke that's being told, right?
Yeah, or maybe it's gonna, I'm like, I don't know what that is either. Let me go look it up. And now they're learning about general relativity and learning about physics.
Yeah.
Like, how are you gonna learn if you don't come across like the big word, look it up, and then you're like, oh, that's what that word means.
Mm-hmm.
I know a word now. I saw it in use. Of course, the downside of that is that for the first 27 years of my life, I thought the word was pronounced epitome instead of epitome. Because I only ever saw it in books.
Right. That's I can't think of how many words off the top of my head where I've had that same problem. So no issues there.
Yeah, that was my attitude. It was like, kids know funny. You don't gotta like dumb it down. Just deliver something smart and funny, and kids will pick up on that because kids are smarter than we give them credit for.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, well, yeah, this is a gorgeous, gorgeous little book too. I mean, like it looks really nice. It's really, really fun. I love the just like the vibrancy of it. I mean, I guess in terms of
I
working with
can't say enough great things about Georgio's art.
right. Yeah. And I was wondering, like where I saw in the back of the book, there's some character concepts and stuff. I guess how closely did you work with Georgeo on putting those characters from what you had in mind versus what Georgeo was going to produce? I guess where was the balance there for the two of you?
So I'd say, Mr. Muffins and Reuben were pretty much what I had in mind,
Yeah.
but not that that was too difficult. This adorable corgi with a blue bandana,
Yeah.
this young kind of Gen Alpha kid with like, who's got some like got like a bit of a fashionable, but casual look to him.
Mm-hmm.
But Giorgio really, and this is where I got to just chef's kiss, hat off, all that to Giorgio, especially the designs of the aliens and the worlds.
Yeah.
I had like rock candy golem was what I had in the script, and he turned it into this very, pastel colored crystal golem species that was super fun.
Yeah.
Kasara, our third main character, our teenage alien lieutenant girl, uh, we put a lot of work into her design, a lot of different concepts. But Giorgio was the one who had the idea for the axolotl influence and
Ah,
giving her
okay.
this much more axolotl evolved amphibious design that just ended up being distinct, like really distinct, some unique elements, and just being this kind of having this nice blend of kind of cute and coolness to it, that I loved and was so perfect. And then her design kind of informed the technology of her Voltarian alliance, with its spaceships being more rounded,
Mm-hmm.
being more like softer edged. And then with the Hakar, our evil alien armada, uh, the big influence for their spaceships and technologies was bird skulls. This kind of combination, like
Oh.
this kind of bird skull meets fighter jet aesthetic, like very sharp, very jagged edged.
Mm-hmm.
That their faces are these very flat, angular, like flat, jagged face plates. This kind of almost more avian dinosaur jaggedness to it that kind of informed them. So just that level of thought he put into like all of the alien designs, and like kind of really thought how their culture and biology would kind of go hand in hand.
That's great. Oh man, I now that you say it, it's all I can see. That's all I can think of. That's incredible. How do we get Georgio on the phone to talk more about this? I'll have to send them an email.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, hit Giorgio up on the gram and the email.
Awesome. Well, okay, so this book, it feels like it's you had a very distinct picture in mind on where you wanted to go with it. But I'm curious, like what is your comic book journey like? Like, were you a comic book reader as a kid? Were you someone that got into it later in life? And like, how did you go from being maybe a fan to a writer, or was it the reverse way? Was it you were a writer and then you were a fan after?
Yeah, so I like really the earliest stuff I read was a lot of like early web comics, especially those 2000s era web comics. If you remember like that era,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of some of my favorites are stuff like 8-Bit Theater, Something Positive, early Penny Arcade,
Okay.
back in the day. Stuff like RPG Hero, which ended up being that I forget is I think Ian Jones ended up going on to create OKKO.
Okay.
Um, and then manga was a huge on me, especially Naruto.
Oh, okay.
Like
Okay.
I read a lot of Naruto, but no, especially Dragon Ball, Yu Yu Hakusho, Bleach, Inuyasha, big influences on me. And then I really got into Western comics and Image and Vertigo and superheroes. Really, when I was in college,
Okay. Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was a comic shop a block off campus, and I'd read some of the big graphic novels. I read Watchmen, I'd read Dark Knight Returns,
Sure.
but having that comic shop just right off campus was really kind of when I really just dived in and immersed myself and kind of really became obsessed with
Yeah.
comics, and just started diving into the history of all these superheroes, of Vertigo books,
Mm-hmm.
like the Western indie classics, 100 Bullets, Sandman, Preacher, Why the Last Man.
I love it.
And at the time, especially Morrison's Grant Morrison, their Batman and Robin. Dick Grayson had just
Yeah.
become Batman.
Yeah.
Jeff Johns' Green Lantern. He was gearing in the lead up to Blackest Night.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Brian Michael Bendis was leading, doing Dark Reign, all the Avengers books.
Yeah.
Where everyone willingly lets Norman Osborn take over. A comic that was absolutely way before its time in 2009.
Listen, I got a bone to pick with Brian Michael
Go
Bendis
read
right
Dark
now.
Reign and tell me that's not the ultimate made 15 years too early comic.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, I
and
I might
so
have to go back
that,
and reread that now just to get myself into the frame set.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, you go back and you read that in 2009, you're like, yeah, okay. He's not even elected. We just give all the power to Norman Osborn, and he just starts gutting everything in terms of
strangely renaming things too, right? Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, just forcing people to accept renaming stuff. And now you read that in 2024, it's like, damn, Bendis was onto something, guys.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's
Sorry
like
to
how
interject.
It's like how Winter Soldier came out, and we were like, "Oh, really? It was all secret Nazis? That's the explanation? Cop out." Now we get it. It's like, I apologize, Winter Soldier. I did not recognize your game. Turns out you were right on the money about the secret Nazis being a problem. We should have listened.
Listen, you're right on the money about this, Ben. I'll just say that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was when I got obsessed, and that was when I really decided that I wanted to be a comic book writer and spend my life making comics. And what you like is that when I made that decision, I was already 4 years into making a web comic.
I see.
As a teenager, I made a Kingdom Hearts sprite comic that is exactly what you think a 15-year-old raised on, like, Chappelle Show and South Park, like, would make for a sprite comic in the 2000s. Don't search for it.
Yeah. We will not put that link in the show notes, folks.
I have gone back and looked at an old strip and been like, oh my God, who made this? I did? Oh no.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like you and I had a very similar. I mean, I didn't start writing comic books, but it sounds like you and I started in comic books, at least in Western comic books, at the same time, because I was reading a lot of that same stuff. So it's really interesting to see that, like, you took all that in, you read your the manga that you were really into, and you've worked on a lot of like YA books. So I guess I wonder what made you pivot from the Kingdom Hearts webcomic to the path that you're on right now.
Oh, if you could go back to that webcomic and say, this is the work of a future GLAAD Award nominee. Oh. It's... So from that webcomic, like, comedy is my foundation.
Sure.
I spent 7 years, made 700 strips where it was like faceless 16-bit characters standing across from each other on stolen backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
All I had was dialogue. That was the only original bit. So I started making comedies. My first works were with an artist, Bruno Hidalgo, an amazing artist out of Barcelona. And we made a book that we did a Kickstarter for and got out called Shaman, which was about a single dad necromancer and his teenage sorceress daughter. And that was very much me taking a love of John Constantine and Hellblazer and merging that with the kind of tone and themes you get in Archer and Venture Brothers and Rick and Morty, and taking that style comedy to the urban fantasy trickster. And then we teamed up again. We made a mini series for Scout Comics called Heavenly Blues, which was about the souls of the greatest thieves in hell teaming up to pull the ultimate heist on heaven.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, what is that like? And just the more I get comfortable, the more I want to branch out. I've been lucky to do middle grade books, like my novel L. Campbell Wins Their Weekend,
Mm-hmm.
like Mr. Muffins. I've gotten to do YA stuff. I like Renegade Rule at Dark Horse. I got to do a issue of Monster High over at IDW, which was like I got to go all in on the teen romance. I really don't want to be boxed into any one genre, any
Sure.
one age group. Like I want to do it all. I want to write kids books. I want to write super dark, violent adult stuff. I want to write the teen romance. I want to play in every playground. I want to get my hands on every toy.
Sure.
When it comes to storytelling and writing and genres, I am the greediest person you will ever meet. I want to write it all.
That's great. I mean, yeah, and I I don't mean to like say you boxed yourself in by any means. I mean, just the books that
No,
we're
like,
looking at
look,
today.
I am so lucky that like any story I get to write is like a dream. Like again, Tokyo Pop and Adi Shankar, Captain Laserhawk, they came to me. They're like, we want to do sci-fi 1980s gay mad love. I'm like, fucking say less. Give me the contract. Where do I sign? Holy shit! Like, and that was fun. And that was so much fun getting to do Captain Laserhawk and just getting to really dive in on my big manga influences and all that, and delivering again to get to do a boys love yaoi manga, this dark drama focused on this person having to confront that the big relationship of his life was this very toxic, controlling, manipulative romance. But even then, like a lot of some ideas, like some of the action scenes for all that, this was like the manga, Tokyo Pop, boys love manga. A lot of some of the ideas for some of the fight scenes, I was inspired by the way Nightwing and Flash communicate movement and speed. So like that's almost like I want to take those writing to like those storytelling devices and put them in. Like Renegade Rule is full of so many just like little like world building devices from like or like little storytelling devices. There's a moment in Mr. Muffins, like the beam struggles are straight out of Dragon Ball.
Oh yeah, I clocked that from about 10 miles away. I love that.
There's a moment where I'm not going to say spoil what you have to read, but something just breaks through space and there's just like cracks and space just starts shattering like glass. That's a visual from Bleach. When the Menos Grande attack Ichigo and Uryu. Like I'm obsessed with like pulling these tropes and devices and resources. Like Heavenly Blues is the story where every issue you learn how each of the main characters died and how that informs who they are in the afterlife and the journey they're on. The whole flashback structure, I got the idea because I love Lost and how they do flashbacks.
Oh, that's great.
Captain Laserhawk is this cyberpunk thing where the whole thing is a character is plugged into a virtual reality space where he is walking through his memories and having to be physically present as he relives, as he like has to witness his own life. I got that idea from Annie Hall, the Woody Allen, Diane Keaton rom-com.
Oh man. Like that's fantastic. Yeah.
Every story is a chance to just take like so many influences from the most unexpected places and just take bits and pieces and just throw a whole bunch of different puzzle pieces together and make something totally new. And that's what I love about writing and comics.
That's amazing. This is the kind of enthusiasm that makes me feel like and reinforces my belief that comics is the best medium, because the fact that you're able to pull all of those things together to tell the stories that you want, and like it's just very, very inspiring to me. So I appreciate that, Ben. That's amazing.
They're the best.
Absolutely.
I love comics. Making comics is the most challenging, difficult, and rewarding thing I have ever embarked upon.
Love it. I love it. Well, I feel like that is maybe the best note to go out on. So I have to wonder, people out there, they want to find more of your work. Where can they find you on the internet? And if they want to reach out to you, where can they do that?
Yes, if you want to reach out to me, send me a message. Purchase copies of my work. Head to benkahn.comics.com, BENKAHN comics.com. That has links where you can purchase comics for all my works, either from me or through various online portals and stores. You can find me on Instagram at Ben Kahn Comics. Same with Blue Sky. Social media, I'm mostly on Blue Sky there at Ben Kahn Comics. And like I said, catch me, Jeremy Whitley, and Emily Martin every Friday on Progressively Horrified, our podcast where we recap, review, and analyze horror movies through the lenses of progressive politics.
I love it. We'll make sure that we've got links to all that stuff in the show notes. Man, what a fantastic time, Ben. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a blast. Kate, I know I didn't let you get any words in, so if you had any last thoughts, now is the time to get them out.
You asked the questions that I had for me in the doc, so that's fine. Thank you.
Perfect.
I'm definitely going to check out your podcast, though. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And feel free to reach out because we are always looking for new guests to join us in discussing all things spooky.
I like that. Well, Ben, again, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone out there listening.
Thank you so much for having me. I had such a great time. Thank you again.
Yeah. We're definitely going to have you come back. If not, maybe we'll bring your whole podcast crew. We'll do a big melding of the universes or something. It could be really, really fun. We'll get that figured out another time. But I want to say thank you to everyone out there listening live. You're fantastic. If you're listening to this episode on Wednesday or whenever you're listening to it, thank you. You're a fantastic human being. The IRCB zine is probably live or will be live on March 3rd. At ircb.fyi/zine. You can go check that out. Next week's show is going to be Kait and Paloma. They're going to be talking about our Goodreads theme of the month book, Popular Comics You Haven't Read That, in our little Google Doc for planning. I wrote this as OMG, you haven't read that yet? Because I feel like that's the response I'm trying to elicit here. But so I'm very excited for everybody out there to hear that episode and hear what books that they picked for the episode. Thank you to Zach for proof listening. Thank you to Zander for editing. And until next time, comics are good, and so are you.